Okay, next is Betsy Stapleton.
Hi. My husband Michael and I have 60 acres on French Creek, which has been identified as a prime area for attention. And I have a couple comments to start. And the first is my husband exerted his executive authority and had me come up here to speak. So if you've got any questions, go to the higher authority back there, please. We've had our property about 10 years. We're living there full-time for a year, so we're newbies, so forgive me for speaking. I know it's kind of intrusive. We came from Humboldt County, however, where we've seen the destruction that happens to the environment due to regulatory burden and also the destruction to social environment. When you take away the ability to have a resource-based economy, you have all kinds of things like subdivisions and illegal activities that have tremendous impact on the environment by pollution and diversion of water resources. And as a good friend of ours back there said, the worst run ranch is better than the best run subdivision. So I hope that any of the regulators keep in mind that resource-based activities are the richest source of environmental protection that's available out there. When we bought our property, it had not been actively managed in since the '64 flood. And we had a denuded riparian area that had been heavily grazed, and there was not a whole lot of new vegetation coming up. There was some canopy. And then we had about 15 acres of pasture land that was essentially a weedy wash with sandy soils that had no cover. The sun was beating down. And underneath that whole pasture area, there is stream water flow. And I can just imagine, I don't have any scientific basis for this, but that the radiant heat on those gravel soils was heating that water under that entire area. So I am going to address the specific areas that Marilyn asked me to address. But in addition to that, we've improved our pasture. It now has a thick stand of grass on it. And so, and that is being done because that's what we want on our land. It's not any government mandate. But I am sure that that's cooling and improving the water flow that's occurring under there. Marilyn asked us to talk about our sediment control. We've rocked all the roads on our property. That's been done at our expense. There is a seasonal water crossing that our road goes across, and we have that rock, so there isn't sediment coming down there. We have culverts coming under the county road that discharge sediments and soils down, and we now have some dikes and dams that control that so it doesn't wash out onto the fields. We have one very difficult culvert area that washes across our field and has a big washout. And we've asked for some engineering help on that because it's beyond our capacity and we haven't had that responded to. In terms of riparian planting, we've had two separate planting episodes in 2 different years. The first one Preston helped us with, and he planted about 75 cottonwoods and willows, and he might be able to tell you the take rate on that. I think it was about 75%. And they did come out and look at what worked and didn't work, and we got feedback about that. And it definitely influenced the planting that we did this past season, where we planted about 125 cottonwood and willows. We did receive grant funding for both of those. However, on the second planting, my husband participated and worked, used our equipment alongside the paid contractor, and that was all volunteer labor. And the total acreage that we've planted, we think, is about 5 acres, and it's about on 5-foot centers. In addition, we've had tremendous natural regrowth because we have done exclusionary fencing along our riparian corridor, and we think our corridor is about 500 feet wide. All these efforts all together, we've seen a tremendous increase in wildlife usage of our property. We've seen bear. We have an active beaver colony in there. We've seen increased woody debris in our creek. However, in spite of all this, we're not seeing a whole lot of fingerlings. So we believe that in spite of our best efforts to improve the habitat on our stream, that there's factors that are outside of our area that's influencing the rate of hatch and fish repopulation. We have done some uplands fuel reduction, particularly with the beetle kill that's going on. We're taking down all the beetle trees and getting them out of there and cleaning it up so that reduces fire risk. And understory clearing, particularly around any of our habitated areas, but we're gradually moving out. This is all done at our own labor, and so we do it as we can. Another area that isn't mentioned, but I will bring to attention, is weeds. This is a particular little subject of mine, but our property was completely infested with weeds because it was not an actively managed area. And as we've taken it on, we've done an incredible amount of an integrated weed management, which does include appropriate application of chemical, but also a tremendous amount of handwork. And but we have noticed, since grazing has been pulled out of the riparian corridor, that the weed rate has just exploded in there. So thinking about how to have appropriate grazing management of those areas, I think, is really important, rather than just simple total exclusion. My husband has participated in fish surveys. He's very actively interested in that. And then to reinforce one of the concepts that got introduced is that my husband has a really creative brain and is fascinated by all this, and he's very interested in trying different things. If we put gravel in, is that going to increase spawning? If we do this or that. But the regulatory barriers from having these creative approaches, small-scale pilot projects with definitive endpoints to see what can we actually do to meet an endpoint, is just absolutely not part of the process that's thought of from the regulators. And I completely agree that we need to have defined endpoints. What are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to get fish there or what? And then have distinct pilot projects with creative ideas that measure outcomes, rather than just huge implementation projects that you don't really understand what the outcome that you're creating is. So thank you very much.
Now that, guys, is the kind of report we want. I really appreciate Betsy and her husband. We've just gotten to know them. They are smart people and a good addition to our valley. Nancy. Here you are.
Hi, I'm Nancy Carver. My management system is going to be a little more brief than the last few that you've heard. I have lived on and helped operate our cow-calf family ranch in Quartz Valley all my life. My mom and dad purchased the ranch in 1946 with claimed and deeded water rights dated from 1857 and 1911. It also has one permitted water right dated of 1978. All the water rights are used for irrigating, stock water, winter stock water, and replenishing the groundwaters. Through the years, we have done timber harvesting, some ground burning, flood and gravity irrigating, and have not placed fences around the creek to keep the cattle away. The cattle are used for weed control and replenishing the soils. This management helps make the ranch a good ecosystem of its own. There are many species of wildlife that enjoy the land and waters of the ranch. If the ranch is forced to pay for permits, studies, and fine for non-compliances, it would most likely become a subdivision and say goodbye to Mother Nature's ecosystem. So I stand here today, I am just saying no, and hope that someday there will be an understanding that realizes the people who live by the land, on the land, for the land, and with Mother Nature will have more of a meaning than the monitoring, studies, and modeling, guessing, and non-complying data that is being done today. And yes, I am Nancy Heidi that Mrs. Seward spoke of teaching at Quartz Valley School yesterday. My daughter, whom Mrs. Seward taught for 9 years at Quartz Valley School and did an excellent job. Now I hope and pray the ranch can survive to someday be managed by Heidi and not the government and its agencies. Thank you.
Nancy, I can't believe I did that and said Nancy Heidi. Oh. I'm sorry, Nancy. I love you guys. Yes, it does. I was thinking, my husband and I have been here almost 44 years, and it's so interesting. When Mike was up here, I was thinking, Wendell married Mike and Sally, you know. And I was thinking, Wendell married Nancy and Gerald. So I feel close to all of you.